suffer.
That's great. We'll move on from that because as part of that focus on creating opportunities and training opportunities for Indigenous people, the Australian government's actually recently introduced changes to its procurement processes. The Indigenous Opportunities Policy is part of a commitment to close the gap on Indigenous disadvantage. The Australian Indigenous Minority Suppliers Council, or AIMSC, has a key role in that to play in communicating and also implementing this new initiative. So let's talk more about that, how it all works, with CEO Natalie Walker, who joins us now from AIMSC. Natalie, welcome to the program.
Hi.
Tell us a little bit more about AIMSC. What exactly is the purpose then? Because, of course, it existed before this whole procurement process changed.
Sure. Well, it's best to think of AIMSC as a dating agency for business.
I love that dating agency. Now, tell us what it means.
Yes, it creates quite a visual, doesn't it? So what we do is we go to the market and find Indigenous-owned, controlled and managed firms located all around the country, and we connect those firms with large corporate and government buyers. And the whole intent of it is to grow a prosperous and vibrant Indigenous enterprise sector by encouraging the largest buyers in the country to buy their goods and services.
So the aim is, if you've got government agencies or large companies, to say where you can go to use Indigenous suppliers to do part of the job or to subcontract and so on.
Exactly.
And is it working?
It is working. So we've seen $21.7 million in contracts awarded by Corporate Australia and Government Australia to the Indigenous businesses that we're working with, and that's over a 21-month period, so $1 million a month, and that's great for Indigenous SMEs.
And what sort of businesses are they?
So just think of everything that you need to buy to run the Centre for Social Impact. Yep. Think of everything you need to buy to run Foxtel. You need stationery, you need telecommunications, you need recruitment services, you need facilities management, you need caterers. They're the types of businesses that we go out and find, and that's what Indigenous business supplies.
So what's the Indigenous Opportunities Policy then? What are the changes and how, you know, who's been affected by that change?
So the Indigenous Opportunities Policy is really designed to encourage the largest suppliers to government, to the Australian government, to subcontract to Indigenous business part of any government work that they might win. So the policy comes in at $5 million for any government spend and $6 million for building construction projects, and it applies to areas where there's a significant Indigenous population. So to give you a specific example, if there's community housing being built in Alice Springs, that's quite a large project, then the Department of Families and Community Services would be asking the building companies that are applying for that work to show how they're going to engage Indigenous businesses as part of the construction works.
So if I'm a large company or a government agency and I come to you to say I'd like an Indigenous supplier, how do I know, or how do you persuade me that this actually is an Indigenous business that you're putting me in touch with?
Really great question, and that's one issue that our members, the buyers, are really concerned about. And so what we have in place is a certification process. It takes about 6 weeks, and what that means is that all the Indigenous businesses that we work with, that our members access for opportunities, have been through that 6-week certification process where we assure our members and we establish that the business is majority owned by Indigenous Australians, that the CEO is Indigenous, and the key decisions in the company are made by Indigenous people.
I know that one of the concerns is that it doesn't seem like, well, for example, you say a business is employed to take that contract. Is it right that you only have to have one person in that organisation, for example, to be declared an Indigenous business? Maybe you have the owner but then 20 non-Indigenous employees. And why does it actually operate like that?
Yeah. Well, in our experience, it doesn't tend to work that way. So with the Indigenous businesses that we've certified, they hold about a 72% Indigenous employment rate. So we don't have to force that issue on them. They're already employing Indigenous people. But secondly, if the company is a medium-sized company and they do have a lot of staff, they would find it really hard to convince us that they Indigenous people are controlling the decisions that are being made in the company if non-Indigenous people are the ones that are only employed. So we do look at that, and they probably wouldn't be able to satisfy the control criteria, so they wouldn't get certified by us.
So is AIMSC simply for Indigenous businesses?
Yes. Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes.
And then you will put them in touch with governments, with companies who are looking to support Indigenous suppliers.
Yes, exactly.
Do you think the Indigenous Opportunities Policy will really make a difference?
Yes, we're already seeing it make a difference. It's only been in place since the 1st of July this year, and what we've seen is about 5 of our suppliers, the businesses that we work with, Indigenous businesses, they've actually been contacted by large suppliers to government to talk about whether they could be subcontracted to as part of a tender that they're preparing for government projects. So it's early days. There's not a lot of tenders out in the marketplace to which it applies, but we are starting to see a bit of a flow through now.
Is it possible it becomes so successful you almost run out of Indigenous businesses? I mean, how many Indigenous businesses are there in Australia?
Well, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics 2006 census, there's about 3,500 Indigenous businesses nationwide, and I like to think that if we're successful through the work that we do at AIMSC, that number's only going to grow, because when Indigenous people see that Indigenous business does have an opportunity to grow and be successful, they'll want to start their own, and we'll see many, many thousands more in years come.
Let's hope so. Natalie Walker, thank you so much.
Thank you.